bear with me here, as there is a lot of information. My husband, age 46, and I, 42F, have been married for 16 years and have 2 kids, ages 13 and 10. He was born with a heart defect and has seen a cardiologist since the age of 20. Last year, he had a heart attack. He collapsed right in front of the kids and me at the park. His heart stopped, and I had to do CPR while my kids watched. Thankfully, he started breathing again by the time the ambulance arrived. He was in a coma for 3 days, and the only reason he survived is thanks to a device called LVAD, left ventricular assist device, which is basically a machine that pumps his blood. The device is attached to his heart and is powered by batteries. A cable comes out of his torso and is attached to a controller, which in turn connects to batteries that he carries in a bag and has to be charged every 12 to 15 hours. At night, the controller connects to a long cable that plugs into the wall outlet. I happen to think this is a miracle of modern medicine, by the way. He thinks it's annoying because the bag is bulky and he had to give up swimming because the cable can't get wet. At first, the doctors wanted to do a heart transplant, but decided he wasn't strong enough to withstand that surgery. The average recovery time for a heart transplant is 3 months, compared to 3 weeks for an LVAD surgery. During this time, he needs a full-time caretaker and he has to relocate closer to the hospital because he would have weekly appointments. He will eventually need a heart transplant, but he can live with the LVAD for years. However, we received extensive information about both procedures. Now, back to the current problem. 3 days ago, I got a call from the hospital to schedule an appointment to meet with a social worker and go over everything I need to know as the caretaker of a transplant recipient. I was completely confused. Based on everything I learned last year, I know this is one of the last steps before adding someone to the wait list. After asking some questions, I learned that my husband had already done all the tests necessary, and depending on the outcome of my appointment, he could be added to the waitlist within days, and because of his blood type, he would probably get a heart within 2 months. I was livid. My husband started the process without talking to me. I asked if there was any risk of heart failure if we wait a little longer. She said there's no risk as long as he takes care of himself. She also said on average, people keep the LVAD for 7 years before getting a new heart. I thanked the social worker and said I'd call her back. The hospital where he would get the transplant is 5 hours away from our home. As I mentioned before, the recovery time is about 3 months. He needs a caretaker with him 24/7, and he has to be within 1 hour of the hospital in case of an emergency. That evening after dinner, I asked him why he hadn't told me that he was planning to get the transplant soon. His answer floored me. He said, "Do I have to ask for your permission? I'm the one having surgery. Don't I get to decide when it happens?" And I asked him who his caretaker was, and then he looked at me like I was an idiot and said, "Are you saying you won't do it? You're my wife." I then asked him who is going to take care of our children for 3 months, and then he suggested they come with us. I then reminded him of a few minor problems that he probably hadn't thought about. I need to get a leave of absence from work, and this is our busiest time of the year. We have no support system as our families live in a different state. The children also have school. I can't take care of them properly if I also have to take care of our kids. We would need to pay rent for an apartment close to the hospital while also paying our mortgage. Not to mention that our 13-year-old is in therapy for acute depression and ideation of taking his own life, which started after the heart attack. Missing therapy for 3 months could be detrimental to his mental health. So I told him something this huge needs to be planned. If he can wait until next summer, my sister, who is a teacher, can come and stay with our kids. We can save money in the meantime, and I can give my work advanced notice so I don't leave anything pending. I also reminded him that there's no rush. The LVAD is working fine. He got angry at me and told me I just can't understand how annoying it is to deal with the batteries. I tried to remain calm, and I said, "You're right. I don't understand what you have to go through, and I get that you have to take care of yourself, but I have to take care of all 4 of us. So I'm asking you to deal with the annoyance for 6 more months so I can come up with a plan that will be the best for everyone." Then he got really angry and started yelling at me, saying I was being selfish, only thinking about what was more convenient for me. Then he asked, "Why are you trying to stop me from getting a surgery that will save my life? Do you want me to die?" And in that moment, I swear, I felt my love and respect for him die a little. I was done being nice. I didn't cry, I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at him and said, "You're the one who's selfish. I can deal with you putting your needs ahead of mine, but not ahead the needs of your children. And you're not dying, so stop being so dramatic. You expect me to drop everything to take care of you because I'm your wife. But it never occurred to you to include your wife in the decision-making process. When you refused to give me a say, you refused me the respect you owe me as your wife. And then he just stood there, literally shaking with anger. His fists were clenched, his face was red, and he refused to look at me. I said, you have two choices. Either you wait 6 months so I can figure out a plan, or you find another caretaker and have your surgery whenever you want. Then after your transplant, you can either treat me with the respect you owe me, or we get a divorce. As I walked away, I added, and if I wanted you to die, I wouldn't have saved your life at the park last year. I then went upstairs to our bedroom, and a few minutes later, I heard him leave the house. He didn't come home that night and has been ignoring my calls and texts. Yesterday, I texted him asking him to let me know he's okay before I report him missing. He texted back, I'm alive, but he still hasn't come home. I know he came by while I was at work because his LVAD stuff is gone, along with some clothes and toiletries. I honestly don't know who he is anymore, but I know my kids are heartbroken because he hasn't even called them. I'm pretty sure my marriage is over, and I keep asking myself if I overreacted, but I don't think I did. So, am I the a-hole? This is one of those instances where I can agree with both sides. As for OP, the wife, I can understand why she felt betrayed having not been included in that decision-making process to get the transplant, especially because she's his wife. She should know she's been super helpful and involved, so to not include her is kind of disrespectful. Or at the very least, just not a thoughtful action. But I also understand that the husband has been having heart problems for 20-something years now, and now he has to lug around this presumably big and cumbersome bag all the time, and I'm willing to bet that it probably is just annoying him, right? It's just annoying to have that all the time, and he's probably just been gradually getting more annoyed and angrier. So I can understand wanting to get rid of that bag as fast as possible. Why wouldn't you want to get a heart transplant as fast as possible? But once again, I understand where both sides are coming from. Let's continue. Update. I posted this at midnight trying to get some perspective, and boy did I. It is now 8 a.m. and my life has changed forever. Thank you to all who posted here. The supportive comments, the ones bashing me, they have all helped me in some way. I've never been called selfish before. It was a new experience. I haven't slept at all. I'm exhausted and completely defeated. Around 5 a.m., I got a message on Reddit. It said, "Hi, this is Shelly, Tom's wife." Not real names. Tom is my husband's friend from work, the one he's always playing golf with. Shelly tells me she saw that I was on Reddit and asks if we can meet for breakfast. I explained that my kids are on winter break and we have plans. She insists, saying she really needs to talk to me. My kids are sleeping. I can't meet her, so she offers to come to my house. Shelly and I have never spent time together, even though our husbands are friends, but she keeps insisting, so I agree and give her my address. When she gets to my house, she's super nervous. She tells me she read my post on Reddit and she figured out it was me. I invited her inside, but she said she doesn't want to wake up the kids and asked if we could talk outside, even though it's like 50 degrees. We walked to the backyard and I lit up candles and turned on the fireplace my husband built in the backyard. She wastes no time and tells me that my husband is cheating on me with a woman he met at the gym. I am so exhausted from the sleepless nights and the emotional shredding I experienced on Reddit that I have no reaction to this. She tells me she and Tom go to the same gym, and Tom convinced my husband to join 2 months after the heart attack. If you read all or most of my posts, you'll know that's when he stopped spending time with his family. My husband lost a lot of weight in the hospital, and his wedding ring was loose and he didn't want to lose it, so he stopped wearing it. Apparently, he charmed her, lied to her, and started dating her. She had no idea he was married, and she was awed by the story of the heart attack in the LVAD. He conveniently left out the part where his wife administered CPR. By this point, I'm so confused and ask Shelly what she's getting out of this. I don't know her. Does she hate me because my husband told her about the other day? She then tells me that she can call Jen and have her come over with proof. So I agree. 10 minutes later, this perky blonde in her mid-20s with a blonde ponytail gets out of a car in front of my house. Her eyes are red and swollen, and she immediately starts crying and saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't know," and she shows me her phone. Picture after picture of this girl with my husband. Some of them with their heads on pillows, mussed hair, and both obviously topless. She then moves on to the text messages, and I want to throw up. Flirty, sexy, and downright X-rated messages going back and forth. Let me insert here that when we were learning about what to expect after LVAD or transplant surgery, the topic of sex came up. The person doing the teaching mentioned that it's normal for a person's sex drive to decrease after surgery. In some cases, erectile dysfunction can be an issue, most likely temporary, but everyone is different. My husband and I have always had a healthy, satisfying sex life. Even after 15 years of marriage, we had sex several times a week, sometimes every day. About a month after he came home, I tried to initiate sex and he apologized, but said he wasn't ready. I didn't push. I tried a couple more times and he felt bad, so I told him not to worry about it. I could wait until he was ready. 13 months later, I found out he's been screwing his 26-year-old personal trainer. How cliche. With every picture, every text, I feel like I was being stabbed in the stomach. But the blow to the heart came with a message from about 2 months ago, when he started telling her that he was ready for the transplant. He told her, not his wife. Some of you suggested that he was terrified of his life depending on a machine, or that his PTSD was so severe he was afraid of dying of a complication with the LVAD. Her next text read, "OMG baby, that's awesome. You were so against it before. What made you change your mind?" He replied and said, "I'm sick and tired of this freaking bag weighing me down. It makes me look old and sick." Then she said, "No, it doesn't. I don't care about a stupid bag. You're super hot." And his answer? "It gets in the way when I have sex with you." That's when I started sobbing. Not because of the message, but because of the date. He sent her the text the day my son attempted to take his life the second time. I was in the hospital ICU watching my son in a bed, wrists bandaged, blood dripping into his veins, praying for God not to take my son away from me. And my husband was at home, supposedly taking care of my daughter and cleaning up the blood in my son's room, probably laying in our bed or sitting on the couch where we made out the week before, and he's sexting his girlfriend. The next day, my son opened his eyes and asked for his dad. I called him and told him our boy was awake and wanted to see him. He was out of breath, told me he was walking into an early meeting and he was late, that he would stop by after work. What did their text say? She sent him a picture of herself, her breasts uncovered to show a hickey the size of a grape. "I like it when the bag slaps my leg, so kinky." And then he replied, "I wish I was there right now. I'll stop by tomorrow on my way to work. Maybe I'll call in sick." And she replied with a peach and eggplant emojis. I did throw up then. I asked her for more details about his transplant. He told her he couldn't stand his mom, so his sister was going to take care of him. She didn't have a husband or child or life, so she could take care of him. When Jen offered to take care of him, he told her he didn't want her to see him at his worst. But 3 days ago, he came over with an overnight bag and asked if he could stay with her, and started hinting that maybe it would be better if she takes care of him after the surgery. I turned to Shelly and asked how long she had known. It seems she saw the post and made a comment to Tom. That's when Tom said it sounded similar to his friend's situation and he told her everything. She started crying because when my husband was playing golf with Tom, Tom was fishing with my husband. After reading that, my husband couldn't go fishing. She realized Tom is lying to her, but she has known Jen for a long time, so she called her to tell her the truth. I asked Jen what she was going to do, and in front of me, she texted my husband and said, "You're a lying, cheating piece of you-know-what. Don't ever contact me again." Her phone started ringing immediately, and she blocked him. Then she agreed to go with me when I met with a divorce lawyer. She promised to give me all the texts and pictures and give a statement if needed. Jen apologized again, and she and Shelly left. Shelly also promised to give a statement as well. After my kids had breakfast, my phone rang. I wanted to throw it in the garbage disposal, but I answered. My husband started apologizing profusely, saying I was right, that he could wait 6 months and he wanted to come home to his family. I told him to stop by after work. So, I have about 9 hours to pack up his stuff and leave it outside the front door with screenshots of their text messages. He'll have no choice but to accept his parents' help now. And I hope to God he has the decency to try to mend his relationship with his children. That's the only chance I'm willing to give him. I'm sorry this was all so long. I'm absolutely drained, but oddly at peace now. So many things make sense. and now I'm going to take my kids to a movie. So you guys remember when I was like, I could see both sides. I understand where they're coming from. Yeah, no, I'm team OP now. I'm team wife. Excuse me? Bro, what? You didn't even want to see your son? I was getting a little emotional when I read that, but now I'm just a little angry because, I don't have words. I am so disappointed in this guy. You got kids, man, and you wanted to go bang the perky blonde trainer. And like she said, what a cliche. How disgusting. There's an update. Let's see what happens next and watch as this husband probably flounders in attempting to redeem himself. Second update. After I told the CD, cheating dick, he could come over after work, I started packing up all his stuff. While clearing out his closet, I found a shoebox with some interesting items. A pink thong with what looks like dried semen, pictures of Jen, naked and asleep. I don't know if she's posing or he took them without her knowledge. And a nice bundle of notes she wrote him over the last 8 months. They are signed and dated. Around 1 p.m., I got a text from the CD saying he was on his way home and asking if the kids could go to the neighbors so we could talk. Fortunately, the kids were already there. CD came in and walked straight to me with his arms open. I avoided him and walked around the kitchen island to stay out of his reach. He actually looked hurt. I asked him why he wasn't at work, and he said he felt so terrible about the way he yelled at me the other night. He left work early to come talk to me. He said he loves me so much. He loves his family and is terrified of losing us. He knows he shouldn't have gone behind my back to start the process of adding his name to the transplant list. He just wanted to get rid of the batteries because they are always in his way. I said, "We have had so many conversations about this in the past year. You decided you didn't want the transplant. You decided you were going to keep the LVAD for a couple years. Instead of going behind my back, why didn't you come to me so we could make a plan together?" He said he thought I'd be okay with it since we've done it before. Bull. We've never made major decisions without talking it through, or at least I haven't. Then I told him, "You know what? It doesn't matter. In the past couple of days, I've realized that we want very different things in the future. I have sensed a major shift in our relationship, and I honestly don't believe our marriage can be saved." I waited a few seconds, but he didn't say anything. And then I said, "I found a petition for divorce form online, and I would like us to go over it and try to agree on stuff. That way, we can avoid expensive lawyers." He went from contrite to looking furious. He started yelling at me, saying, "If you think you can get rid of me, you are out of your freaking mind." I reminded him that he just apologized for yelling at me, and now he was doing it again. He continued yelling, "F that and F you, and what about our vows? What about in sickness and in health?" And I looked at him and asked, "What about forsaking all others? Who broke their vows first?" And the look on his face would have been funny if I wasn't so scared of him. He called me a B-word and stormed out of the house. Before this week, he had never yelled at me, never directed profanities at me, never called me names. But I tried to calm down so the kids wouldn't see me upset when they came back. About 30 minutes after CD left, I got a message from Shelly. She said Jen really needed to talk to me and give me both their cell numbers. I called Jen. She was crying and told me CD came to her apartment and was begging her to open the door so they could talk. He said he loves her, apologized for lying to her about being married, but swore that his marriage was over long ago, and the only reason he stayed married to me was for the kids. When he saw that she wasn't budging, he started sobbing uncontrollably and asked her for another chance. He told her he's filing for a divorce on Monday so they can get married once it's final. Jen told him she can't trust anything he says. How can you tell someone you love them and lie to them for months? She asked him to leave. He asked if he can call her. She said no. She's telling me all of this while on her way out the door, and I can hear a whispered, "What the F?" And I asked her what was wrong, and she said CD was sitting in his car crying. I stayed on the phone with her until she got into her car and drove away. I took the kids to dinner and we had a great time. When we got home, they wanted to read, so they went to their rooms. I got a big glass of wine and sat down with my own book. Then I got a text from Jen saying CD approached her at the gym and went from "Please, baby, give me another chance" to "Are you flirting with that effer to make me jealous?" Jen admitted that she's scared of him and is thinking about getting a restraining order. She's going to unblock his number so she can have more proof of his harassment. Around 8:45, CD came over again and stopped dead in his tracks when he saw all the moving boxes. He looked at me and said, "Where do you think you're going?" I thought that was hilarious. I told him that was his stuff, not mine. I told him our marriage was over and since he took some of his stuff a few days ago when he walked out, he could go ahead and take the rest. He said he was staying here, and I said, "Where did you stay the past few days?" And he answered, "At Tom's." And I looked at him and said, "Stop lying. We both know you were with your girlfriend." He swears he doesn't know what I'm talking about. He loves me and wants to fix our marriage. And then I said, "I thought you were only with me for the kids and planned to file for divorce on Monday." And he asked me who told me that. I said, "Obviously Jen." He went still and pale and asked, "Who's Jen?" I sighed and said, "I'm done. I'm so tired of your lies. I want a divorce. I want us to sit down and talk and agree on who gets what. I want to work out a schedule for the kids without going to court. But most of all, I want you out of the house and out of my face." He snorted. That MFer snorted and says, "Why should I make it easy for you?" I grabbed my phone and showed him a picture of the contents of his shoebox, because if we go to court, I'm pretty sure you'd be screwed. He looked at me defeated, and all he managed to say was, "What about my transplant?" I told him his transplant is none of my business and to call his parents, who are amazing people and are eager to help him. And just when I thought he couldn't get any douchier, he tells me I can keep the house if I help him through his recovery. I told him to get the hell out of my house before I throw his boxes in the front lawn and set them on fire. And then finally, he left. I'm sitting here nauseated, angry, hurt, wondering how I'm going to get through a lifetime of dealing with him for the sake of my children, and wondering if he really did change or he's been like this all along. And I'm so angry at myself because I know I'm going to cry myself to sleep over a pathetic a-hole who doesn't deserve my tears. So, right here in the notes, this is where they want me to do narrator's commentary, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I just want to know what happens next, so let's just skip through it. Woo! Final update. It's been a crazy few days. So much has happened. The day after CD offered me the house in exchange for being his nurse for 3 months, he sent me a text. This would be Saturday, 12/23, asking if we could talk. I told him yes, as long as he doesn't yell at me and he spends some time with the kids. He agreed. I told the kids daddy was coming over and that I was going to get some coffee while they hung out. When CD got there, he seemed genuinely happy to see the kids, but my son asked if he could go with me instead. I asked him why he wanted to go with me. He said, "Please, I'd rather not stay." Then my daughter said she didn't want to stay without her brother. CD got mad and sent them to their room so he and I could talk. Once again, he went from apologetic to angry, to distraught to cruel. I tried to be calm and told him I really think he needs someone to talk to. I didn't want to use the word therapy, and I pointed out that last year has been very traumatic and stressful, and he needed more support than I alone can provide. He said he'll go to therapy if I agree to be his caretaker, but he would only agree to see a marriage therapist. I said no. Our marriage is over, and no amount of therapy will change my mind. Also, the only thing I'm willing to negotiate is the terms of the divorce. We went back and forth. He said he will never agree to a divorce. I said he doesn't have a choice. He said he would fight me for full custody. I said he can try, but I don't think he'll win. Then he said, "If you agree to be my caretaker, I will sign the divorce papers, give you the house, and full custody of the kids." I wanted to yank our wedding pictures off the wall and break them on his head. I said, "If you really mean that, put it in writing." He then left without saying bye to the kids. On Christmas Eve, I tried my best to continue with our family traditions. My son seems better now. We baked cookies and he helped me clean the kitchen. He started talking about how excited he is about starting high school next year. If you haven't been around a teen who's tried to take their life, then you have no idea how huge this is. My son is talking about the future like he actually wants to be here. I wanted to cry, just sit in the middle of the kitchen and bawl like a baby. We had a wonderful Christmas Eve drinking hot chocolate and watching Arthur Christmas. CD texted me to ask if he could come over the next day to exchange gifts with the kids. My son said okay as long as I don't leave the house. I relayed that information to CD and he agreed. Christmas morning was awesome. My kids gave me a necklace with a see-through locket-type pendant with charms inside, a house, a car, 2 cats, and stick figures of a boy and girl with my kids' birthstones. I love it. We went to church and dropped cookies off at the police station and fire department. CD came over in the afternoon. It was okay. I had already bought him a gift, so I told him he could have it. After the kids opened their gifts, he said he needed to go to his den to get my gift. I told him he could go get it, but I didn't want it. He came back with it and said, "Trust me, "You want this. It's big, so it's a Christmas/birthday gift." I opened it because my kids seemed to knew what it was and they were really excited. And screw that man to hell and back because he gave me something I'm going to have a really hard time refusing. A trip to Vegas in February and 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. He knows my team has an excellent chance of making it to the Super Bowl this season. He also knows that the thing I love the most after my family, friends, and pets is my football team. And I know that he's going to insist on going with me. Afterwards, we talked some more and I told him I'm really worried about him. His mood swings are so severe that he's making people afraid, including his kids. He said he knows, that he's starting to scare himself. I told him I don't understand why he won't let his mom help. He said he got it into his head that I'm his wife, so I should be the one taking care of him. I asked him if he would reconsider letting his parents help. He said, "What if we wait the 6 months you asked for? Then when your sister comes to stay with the kids, you can go with me. Meanwhile, we can see a marriage therapist." I really don't know how to make him understand that I'm not going to change my mind about the divorce. I said, "Remember before we got married, we talked about how many kids we wanted, we picked baby names, and we agreed that our marriage could survive anything, except 2 things. Do you remember that?" He didn't say anything, so I continued. "I told you I could forgive anything except any kind of abuse towards myself or my kids and infidelity. You felt the same way." Then he went to say goodnight to the kids. They all came back and the kids asked if Dad could spend the night. I didn't have the heart to say no, but I made it clear he would stay in the guest room. He came to my room at night and tried to talk himself into our bed. Hell no. I asked him to leave and locked myself inside. The next day, yesterday, he left for work and made a comment like, "I'll see you at dinner," and I reminded him the overnight stay was a one-time thing and he had to find another place to stay at. Me? I had a super busy day. The first thing I did was leave a message for CD's social worker at the hospital and another for a local divorce attorney asking for an appointment ASAP. My kids went over to the neighbor's house while I went with Jen to the courthouse to file a restraining order. She'll be notified of the hearing date by mail. I called Shelly to see how things are going. She and Tom are working stuff out and she's staying with him. Best of luck to her. Then I went home and picked up my son for his therapy appointment. I asked for 5 minutes before the session started. I told the therapist almost everything that's happened. I asked him for the best way to tell my kids what's going on in an age-appropriate way. He said to tell them the truth without going into details and let them ask questions. He called my son into the room and asked him, "Can I tell your mom some of what you've shared with me regarding your dad?" My heart sank. My son said, "I'll tell her." He turns to me and starts telling me that he has overheard his dad talking to another woman, that the conversations are inappropriate and he has to make sure his sister is distracted while his dad is on the phone. But he thinks she knows because sometimes she gets really sad and asks if daddy is on the phone again. He looked to his therapist for support, I guess because he kept going. The last time we spent time with Dad, he took us to the skateboarding park and then spent the entire time talking to a lady. When I came close, I heard him say we were his niece and nephew. I asked him why he said that, and he told me I heard him wrong, but I didn't like the way he was talking to her. I thanked him for telling me. I stepped out and let them continue with their session. On our way home, I stopped at the hardware store for a deadbolt. Of course, when CD tried to get in and couldn't, he threw a fit. He started kicking the door. I told him he was scaring the kids and I would have to call the cops. He left. Then, about an hour later, I got a call from Jen saying he showed up at her place again to continue begging. At this point, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do about this and kind of wished she would leave me out of it. I told her to not open the door and to call the police if he doesn't leave. I called my home security company to ask about getting copies of any recordings from our doorbell and living room cameras in case I need them for court. Today, I talked to the social worker. She told me CD revoked my release of information, so they can't talk to me about his medical information. I said that's fine. I told her about his extreme mood shifts and that I would not be his caretaker. I told her I'm really worried about him because he's acting completely out of character. She said she would schedule an appointment with him to see what's going on. I was also able to meet with a lawyer. She made time for me during her lunch hour, and I'm going to file a restraining order. If CD gets violent again, I will call the cops and ask for a psychiatric hold. The police might not do it, but at least the police report would show that I requested one. I took my daughter to her first therapy session and told her therapist what's going on. She told me she's going to communicate with my son's therapist so they're on the same page. They work for the same behavioral health center. I called my in-laws and told them everything. They said they've been worried about him, but they figured it was nerves because he was about to get his transplant. But now they know he's been lying. They're coming to California to try to help. I'm not sure what they can do, but at the best, I'm hoping they can take over dealing with his BS. I had a talk with my kids. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I explained to them that their dad and I don't get along anymore and we're getting a divorce. My daughter started crying and asked if it was because of the other ladies. I told her that's part of it, but Daddy also went through something very traumatic last year, and he hasn't been the same. He needs time to recover and decide if he wants to go back to the way he was before. She asked me if he would come back home if he gets better, and I said no. My son said he's scared of his dad and doesn't want to live with him. My daughter said the same. She also thinks it's her fault for not telling me about the other ladies. So that's another topic for her therapist. I told her it's absolutely not their fault. Whatever goes wrong between two married people is their fault alone. She asked what I did wrong, and I told her it took me too long to realize how much Daddy had changed and I didn't help him sooner. My son asked if we could move back east so we would be close to family. I told him we need to stay here for now so that we can be close to Daddy, but we'll talk about it again in a few months. So, I'm filing for divorce and I'm asking for full custody for the time being. Once Dick agrees to therapy and starts making some progress, we can revisit the custody agreement. I'm going to look for a smaller house for the kids and me. CD loves this house, so he can keep it or we can sell it. I really don't care. I am strangely numb. I found a therapist for myself. I start next week. I'm glad I'll have someone who can help me through this. Anyway, I think that about covers it. What a roller coaster this has been. I wasn't going to add this last update, but I figured since I dragged you into this drama, even if it's online, I owed it to you to tell you what's going on. Thank you for the support. It has helped me more than you could possibly know. I really liked what she said at the end there, because if you're going to include all these people in these stories and drama and ask for advice and questions, you should at the very least give them a resolution to the conflict, because we know there's so many stories where people don't give that final update, but this story was hard for me to read. It struck a few chords with me, childhood and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm going to try and end on a positive note. What do you guys think? This has been a long one. It was crazy to read. Got a little emotional at times, I must admit. But I'm better now, and I'm a stronger narrator because of it. All right, I'm done. Bye-bye.